But I very much wonder whether we will ever be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Remember that when people talk about we need a new world order, we need new institutions, we need new rules, remember how the last one came about. 1945, the United States has utterly destroyed the Axis powers, the United States and the Soviet Union, and it comprises something like 50% of global GDP by itself. Europe is flattened. The dollar is the only viable currency in the world. American financial power is the only viable financial power in the world. And it creates a world order that we've been familiar with ever since. We are never going to have a moment like that again. There is no country that is going to have that much power. There is no moment that is going to be so plastic and open that you can just reform the world in the way you want. So we are going to live in a very messy, complicated world in which, it almost be like an archaeological process where the old will stay, but new elements will be mapped onto it. So I do believe we are going to see a period of substantial deglobalization. I do think that when you take the 11th largest economy in the world and you essentially permanently, or not permanently, but in a highly effective way, remove it from the world economy, which is what is happening. And when that economy then starts trying to figure out how it is going to survive, which means that it moves into a Chinese orbit and will become essentially a Chinese vassal state, which the Chinese will welcome because it provides them with it's a classic colonial relationship. It provides them with raw material and energy in return for which they provide it with security. And that dynamic is likely to expand in various ways. That produces a kind of zone of its own. You will have the West, again metaphorically, in a zone of its own, and you will have this gray zone of countries trying to choose piecemeal whether they can really, whether they can have an a la carte menu into this world. And the Chinese and the Americans are going to say, no, it's a prefix menu. If you want economic protection, you have to accept the economic system. And the Chinese are going to say the same. But it's not going to work because the world is too complicated and too interdependent. And so everyone is going to be in a gray zone trying to navigate this world. We've gone from a world in which political risk was virtually non-existent to a world in which everything is being determined by political risk. Think about the transformation in the way in which economics has dominated politics for the last 30 years, and now politics is dominating economics. And I don't mean, and this is again, these forces have been coming together. It's not just happening in a country like India. It's happening in the United States. If you look at Joe Biden's economic program, a large amount of it is distressingly similar to Donald Trump's on this count. The protectionism, the Buy in America provisions, the tariffs that have been maintained on all kinds of countries and goods. If you look at the way in which people are talking about supply chains, resilience, all these have the effect of deglobalizing, creating regional supply chains, all of which, by the way, I'm not an economist, but have to be inflationary. Because what you're saying, what was globalization all about? It was saying we are going to find the most efficient way to source goods and services at the lowest cost. If you deglobalize, you are choosing higher costs, almost by definition. And so you are likely to see a world which is more divided, more fractured, more inflationary, with slower growth. Markets are going to be smaller everywhere. And so the question then becomes, how much political discord and division does this produce? Because remember, the world of the Cold War got stable after a period of fairly hair-raising series of crises in the 1950s and the 1960s, culminating in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
ABP News, आपको रखे आगे।